Now, if you do a search on Google with for Neanderthal DNA, you'll find the story that broke quite recently that it's been found that up to 20% Neanderthal DNA is in humans. I suspect it's much more than that, but they've made it sort of sound less important than it is. But at least 20% of Neanderthal DNA is in humans. What they forget or don't mention outright here is that it's only white people and Asians that have Neanderthal DNA. It says, basically, if you look further down in the text, that Africans do not have Neanderthal DNA. But if you look even closer, it will actually give you a bit more detail, that sub-Saharan Africans are the ones without Neanderthal DNA. And that's who we are. We are called sub-Saharan Africans, but we're not from Africa. And we'll get into that in a few minutes. But one more thing I want to say about this is there was a further news story about how scientists looking at Neanderthal bones discovered that in Neanderthal DNA itself, there was human DNA before the supposed mixing of Neanderthals and humans. So Neanderthals had human DNA in their genome. So that basically kind of backs up my idea that Cain mixed with the Neanderthals. As I said, he took a wife amongst them, and he passed on his DNA into Neanderthals before actually Esau started mixing with them. I didn't mention that, but the Horites who lived in Mount Seir, they were the offspring or the throwback to the Neanderthals, cave dwellers, known as troglodytes in the Bible, but that was before we had the name Neanderthal. So basically, we have a race of non-humans that are walking amongst us. White and Asian people, as I said, have Neanderthal DNA, and it's only us, sub-Saharan Negroes, that are fully human. White genetics are recessive, black genetics are dominant. White people are susceptible to harmful mutations, and we're not so much. White skin is sulfur-based, but melanated skin is based on selenium, which is a superconductor. Sulfur is an insulator. There's a marked difference between our skin types. White skin is damaged by sunlight, whereas melanated skin is energized by it. Rh negative blood has a high copper content, and Rh positive is higher in iron. Black people are physically stronger and mentally more robust, and black children develop much quicker than all other races. So let's have a look at the traits of the Nephilim seed. I'll go into these in detail, but literally there was a whole list of traits that were decidedly not human, and would have been very, very strange to the people of that time. So the first one, giantism. We still have giants walking around today. The Smithsonian and the Vatican were, over the last couple of centuries, were very thorough in hiding any evidence of giants. There were many finds of giant bones, giant skeletons, but they were quickly snapped up and covered up by the museums and especially the Smithsonian Institute. So, as I said, you can still see evidence of giantism today. And another trait is 6 fingers and toes. Again, we have lots and lots of evidence, and there are people around today that still have 6 fingers and toes. I believe Halle Berry has six toes. Next trait is 2 rows of teeth. And again, very occasionally, children are born with more than 1 row of teeth. Excess body hair. Now, a tail. Now, in this culture, when a baby is born with a tail, they cut that thing off very, very quickly. White skin was also one of the traits, and if you look in the Book of Enoch, it actually tells you that the Nephilim had white skin because Noah. So pale skin isn't natural to this earth. The sun on melanated skin energizes that skin, but when it hits white skin, it damages it. I've seen, you can see on this picture, these the boils of pus basically on this child's back. But I've seen people, I've literally actually seen this, where somebody has pizza-like skin that peels off their back when it's severely burned. And these two don't look very happy at all, do they? Blue or green eyes is another trait of this bloodline. Blue eyes are a indication that they completely lack melanin. And the eyes of white people show the greatest diversity of any peoples. They could be grey, blue, green, hazel, and any shade in between. With black people, there's pretty much only one eye colour, and that's brown. Of course, you get mixtures between black and white, and so you get a bit more diversity there. Now, Rh-negative blood is the most interesting part because I'll explain what Rh-negative blood is. It's a blood type that is lacking a certain protein coating. And only 15% of the human population have this lack of protein coating. It's called Rh-negative. So you know of the blood types or blood groups A, B, O, AB. But you can also have this what they call the rhesus factor, which is negative or positive. As I said, most people have this protein coating on their red blood cells, so they're positive. If you don't have this protein coating, you're negative. The thing about this blood is that it's incompatible with the rest of the species. Okay, a woman who's Rh negative, conceiving a child with an Rh positive man, her blood cells will start to attack the baby as a foreign object, because literally the blood is incompatible. So the scientists don't know where this mutation came from, but it's suddenly entered the human genome. One interesting thing is that Rh negative blood has a very high copper content, which is why the people that had this type of blood were called blue bloods. And it's been proven that the royal family have Rh negative blood. I think Prince Charles gave blood in the 80s, and it was revealed he was Rh negative. And these royal families do not marry outside of their bloodlines. And indeed, they consider their divine right to rule is from the fact that they have the blood of the gods. Which gods, you have to ask. The final trait I want to look at is cunning, this type of intelligence that I mentioned before, and wickedness, psychopathy. Well, only one bloodline owns all the corporations that are destroying this earth right now. One bloodline owns all the banks, is responsible for all the poverty in the world. Only one of these bloodlines is responsible for the mass murder, genocide, and war that goes on in the world. And one bloodline owns the pharmaceutical corporations that are slowly poisoning the world. There's none of us who own these companies. So if you look at Ham's descendants and look in the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, you'll find that it says that Ham was the father of the Egyptians, the Libyans, Ethiopians, and Canaanites, but not the Negroes. Interesting. Now, there were six-fingered giants among the Canaanites and the Egyptians and all the ites and eames of the Bible. Yeah, that shows that Ham's bloodline was corrupted by this serpent seed to a great degree. In Japheth's line, Japheth was the original inhabitant of Europe. In Japheth's line, there was at least one giant, maybe a couple more, but it was Gog or Magog were from the line of Japheth, indicating that line also was corrupted. The only line that wasn't corrupted was Shem's, and it turns out the Negroes, us, we're of the line of Shem. Yeah, we are the Shemites, not those other people. So let's make sure that the Israelites were black. I've just explained that we're not of the line of Ham, of Shem. Moses, if you read the story in Exodus, was raised as an African prince, as well as being an African Egyptian prince, as well as being mistaken for an Egyptian at the wells of Midian. So it can't be argued anymore that the Egyptians were white, because if you imagine white people in the burning sands of Africa without sunblock, they wouldn't last very long. Okay, the Egyptians were black, and Moses was able to masquerade as the son or grandson of the Pharaoh, just after the Pharaoh had decreed that all Hebrew children were to be put to death. So the Pharaoh was fooled by Moses because he was also black. Later on in Numbers, it tells of how Moses' sister, Miriam, was turned white as a punishment, as leprous as snow. And also another telling thing was Moses had his skin turned white as a demonstration that the Most High was, it was the Most High he was talking to. You had Charlton Heston play Moses in the Ten Commandments, but funny enough, they seem to kind of leave that bit of the story out, because that wouldn't be much of a demonstration of the Most High's power to make Charlton Heston's skin turn slightly paler. So Moses looked very different from Charlton Heston. Also, if you go through the Old Testament, there are plenty of references to how the Israelites were black people. I'm not going to go through them here, but there are. This list is only some of the ones I put together. But as you read through it, you'll find lots and lots of instances